Welcome to another episode of the Walk Podcast. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by safety for the Texas Longhorns, Michael Taaffe.
Appreciate you having me on. This is awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us and for taking the time to do so in a busy season. I know you've got a big game coming up Friday.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, would love to just start by asking, where did you grow up? Where are you from? And what was it like?
Yeah. Grew up in Austin, Texas. So been here 22 years. Grew up in a neighborhood called Westlake. And it was great. I got a family of four with two great parents. So I'm the youngest of four. Got two older brothers and an older sister. And, growing up, it was always trying to chase them, right? Like whether it was basketball, baseball, football, soccer, whatever it was. I was always trying to play with them and keep up with them. So Westlake, the community is very competitive. It's a very competitive environment. So, it was really fun. It was a lot of fun. I think, my parents guided me in a great light and showed me what was important in life. And, life is a lot less stressful when you're a kid and your parents tell you exactly what to do. So they guided me really well, and it was awesome growing up in Westlake.
That's awesome. In what ways do you feel that they guided you well?
I think they just showed me, they lived out Jesus' light. It wasn't necessarily you have to go to Bible study, you have to do this, you have to do that. It was more so, let me show you what ways Jesus portrays himself. And I truly believe that my parents walk in the light of the Lord. And whether it's, telling me, respectful ways of, holding the door for everybody, or yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, or loving me and my brothers and sisters. And in turn, now I can love others because I was once loved. Showing that love of Christ, I think, I didn't see it then, but I definitely see it now.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of your earliest memories of God, Jesus? What did that look like?
Yeah, I think the first time I really accepted Christ was at a Bible study retreat in 8th grade, where we, it was one of those Bible study retreats where you go on to have fun. You're not really, like the worst part of the weekend is when you sit down and you talk about the Lord. Like the best part is, going on the soccer field and playing football and, sneaking out late at night and trying not to get caught, right? It was one of those deals. But the last night we all separated and you just sat alone, no music, no nothing, no phones. You just sat alone. If you wanted to pray, you could pray. If you wanted to journal or write, you could write. If you wanted to read, you could read. And I just sat there and prayed, and I didn't know what I was praying or who I was praying to. But I believed in God. I just didn't feel it, right? And right then and there, I totally felt Jesus' presence, and it was so awesome. And I don't think I stopped there. I think it's definitely been a roller coaster. But what God brought to me that day was, a linear graph instead of this roller coaster of emotions living on earthly things. I just lived on my identity being in Christ and knowing that through the good and the bad, God is always able.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned kind of the roller coaster and how that's shifted into more of like a linear graph as far as your faith walk goes. But what have some of the difficult parts of that been? Because I think oftentimes on podcasts like this, or when people might be sharing about their faith story, it becomes a lot about like the blessings and all those things. But could you speak to like just some of the challenges?
Yeah, for sure. I think adversity was really tough for me because, doubt always creeps in, but it never creeped in more than when adversity would hit. when I would lose a best friend, or I would lose a family member, it was more so just, why is this happening? If you're a loving God, like you say, if you're a gracious God, why is this happening? Especially people at such young ages. um, or you miss a play in front of 10 million fans and you're getting humiliated on all social media platforms. It's like, why is this happening? This is not what I asked for. And so I think that that doubt creeps in when adversity strikes. But I'm constantly getting reminded by God that you have to go through adversity to understand that this is not our home. Eternal life is where we belong, and God shows us that through adversity. And you'll never understand it until you face something like that you truly have to lean on Christ. And I always get reminded that I can't do this alone. I think the pressure that we get put in as college athletes, the adversity that I've had to face in my life, nobody could do it alone. And so God has always reminded me that, I have to surrender to Him.
Yeah, and probably the best example of a lot of the things that you had just talked about as far as adversity, surrender, leaning on other people, the best example of that would be Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
No one faced more adversity than He did, being crucified on the cross.
Right.
But at the same time, He also had 12 disciples and leaned on the people around Him.
Yeah.
And that was such a big part of His life here on earth.
Right.
You mentioned that you lost one of your best friends.
Mm-hmm.
When did that take place?
Yeah, it was my senior year of high school, getting ready to go walk on to the University of Texas. And like everything was great in my life, right? I just said yes to be able to, walk on at my dream school. I'd always grown up being a Texas Longhorn, and, you're graduating high school, and that's the time where grad parties and school doesn't really matter, and second semester of senior year. So you're living life. And then just like that, step of a moment, my buddy gets in a car crash, and, he passes away. And 67 days later, one of my brother's best friends, siblings' best friends, really good family friend of mine who was like an older brother to me, Jake Ellinger, he passes away 67 days later. So just like that, I never really had faced that adversity in my life, and, to that degree. And all of a sudden, within 2 months, I'm having to deal with two people that were really close in my life that weren't going to be there anymore. And that was really tough. I think just knowing that, if I don't have a faith, then what was the purpose of their life, right? If I didn't know that there was something way better that we can't understand right now, that's out there for us when God calls us home, I think I would be doing way worse than I am doing right now, because I couldn't wrap my head around why would they leave so early. And so it was tough for a moment, but I remember me and my other best friend who were, really close to Jackson, the guy, my buddy that passed away in a car crash. He always told me, he said, if Jackson didn't have a faith, then I would be in shambles right now. But I know that God called him home, and that's what we have to put our trust in.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. It's
Sure.
powerful, and sorry you had to go through that. I can only imagine how tough that was. What did Jackson mean to you as a friend, or like what are some of your fondest memories of him?
Yeah, definitely one of the coolest memories. Well, he was in this thing called, I wasn't in it. Clearly I wasn't worthy enough, but it was called the Sea Society. And at Westlake, they had this little private society that would just write letters and do things around campus to just bring people joy. And he wrote me a letter, and I didn't know it was him at the time. And then my other buddy, Ryan Lindley, he told me that was him when he passed away. But it was, he wrote a Bible verse in there. And he just told me to keep spreading my light. Everything that I do, do it for the good works of the Lord. And he was very inspired by me, and, the smile that I bring every single day. And so that was really special to get a letter from him. And then another memory I have of him is my first varsity start. He was injured, so he wasn't playing. And he came up to me and he was like, "Game's going to go fast. You can't do anything but just live it up and enjoy it. This is what you dreamed of your whole life." So from then on, every single game that I've played, whether it's high school, whether it's Texas, I've just been able to enjoy it, knowing that, this is what I dreamed of, and I got to be so grateful for the moment.
Yeah. Wow. Sounds like he is still someone that's like impactful to you, to this day. And
Definitely.
that's awesome. For those that are out there that might be experiencing a loss right now and they feel down, they feel that pain, having been through it yourself, losing people that are close to you, what would your advice be to them?
Yeah, I think one, I think the Psalms helped me a lot, because it let me get my emotions out. The Psalms, the poems that are written in the Bible, they're prayers, and I feel like at the beginning, it's writing about how we don't understand what's going on, but it always talks about trusting in the Lord and that He will answer our prayers. We may not see them, or they may not be the answers that we wanted, but they're the answers that we need. And so I think the Psalms help me a lot, but also just knowing that, you know, God, we're not worthy to understand what God has in store for us or what God has in store for their friends or their family. Um, but if you truly put your trust in the Lord, knowing that eternal life is our home, I think that sets you, so free, and the weight of your shoulders, just knowing, or just having that unknown of what's going on, the uncertainty. I think that just falls off your shoulders, and that was the biggest. That was the biggest, relief for me, knowing that I carry so much weight with me every day, but to give that to the Lord and for Him to free me from all the chains of worry, of anxiety, of pressure. It feels so good.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it's great that you sought out the word during that time for guidance, because that's obviously the best place to go.
Right.
And it's not Psalms isn't like a super common place to go to,
Yeah.
but it's really cool to hear that that is what spoke to you in that moment and really helped you through.
For sure.
So after getting through that, you're able to, of course, walk on at Texas. But how would you? I think you have such an amazing story, and so the question I'd like to ask, if you could start from like senior year of high school, how would you tell the Michael Taaffe story?
That's a long story. I think it really starts freshman year of high school because, I was the youngest of four, and so I was always, pretty good at sports growing up, just because I was always playing with older people. But freshman year was the first time I've been placed on a B team, and all my life I wanted to go play, football at the University of Texas, and so being placed on the B team freshman year, I was like, I'm not even good enough in my own class at my own high school to be on the A team. Like, surely I'm not good enough to play at the University of Texas. And so that really tested everything that I believed in, all the hard work and my faith, and just everything that I said I believed in. At that moment, I truly understood that I was working for the results and not just for the process. And sophomore year comes around and I get put on the JVB team, and that was really hurtful because I wasn't on varsity, I wasn't on JVA, but I was on JVB. And the adversity that I had to go through to get over that hump from going from JVB team to starting on varsity that next year, as much as it was physical, it was mental, of just, quit worrying about the results. God has that all figured out. Trust Him and just work and have fun. You play this game. You started playing this game when you were a little kid because it brings you joy. So just keep playing and working really hard because that's what you love to do. And so I totally flipped the switch of like worrying about what the results were and just worrying about having fun. And so I think that really helped me get through being a walk-on, because instead of worrying about when am I going to get on scholarship, when am I going to play, when, I just was so in love with the process. Whether it was definitely tough in the moment. Not saying that it was easy at all. Mentally, physically, spiritually, it was super tough knowing that, you put so much time into this game and you don't see any of the benefits at the time, that was really tough. But just, leaning on God and not my own understanding helped me get through that so much. And, I ended up walking on freshman year, sophomore year. I started in every single game on special teams. Got in a little bit on defense that year. And then after sophomore year, I got put on scholarship for the bowl game in the Alamo Bowl our sophomore year. Junior year ended up starting, I think, 7 games. And then senior year started every single game. And then my 5th year, besides getting hurt, I've started every game. So it was a wild roller coaster. But, I think, leaning on my firm foundation, being in Christ, helped me get through everything because there was nothing where I knew there was no battle that I knew I was alone in. I always knew that God had me right where I needed to be.
And with all the success that you've had, both individually and also, helping your team, 3 straight CFP semifinals and just a lot of success that you all have had. For you personally, do you think that all would be there without your faith?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think, shoot, I wouldn't know. I don't know what I would do without my faith. But, I think an example right now, God is really testing me because there's so much pressure to win, that I put on myself. I came back for a 5th year to try to win the national championship. And we had 2 early losses in the season. And then we lost to Georgia. And it was like, shoot, there's a bunch of unknown of, did I come back for the right reasons? And I put so much pressure on myself. I put a lot of pressure on myself to go get drafted in the offseason and live out my NFL dreams. And God really is testing me right now to know that if you try to do it all by yourself, you're going to crumble. These earthly things that seem like they give you promises, they're always going to fail you. At some point, they will always let you down. And, Jesus Christ will never let you down. And so I think to answer your question, long story short, I could not be where I am today without my faith and without Christ. And not anything that I did, but everything that he did. And all I had to do is just accept it.
For those that are out there that haven't yet accepted Jesus, how would you describe Jesus to them?
Yeah. He's a gracious God. He's a loving God. He's a forgiving God. But more than all that, he's a servant God. There's nothing good or bad. There's nothing that I have to do on this planet to get acceptance from the Lord. I don't have to do 1,000 hours of service work. I don't have to, go to church every Sunday because that's what is going to get him to love me. He has already done everything for me. And that brings me so much freedom, knowing that on earth, we're always going to fail. We're always going to fall short to God's glory, to God's grace. And that's okay because he's already ran the race for us. He's already broke the chains that we can't break. And, if somebody's watching and they haven't accepted Christ yet, it's a feeling of freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's very well put. And he is there for all of us, and there's nothing that we can do to outperform what he did on the cross.
For sure.
I think you nailed it on the head. You mentioned, expectations going into this season, and then sitting here today, there's Texas in a spot where there's a chance you could make the playoffs, but it might be difficult. Of course, you need to win Friday, but dealing with all the expectations on the team and then thinking about, NFL draft upcoming in the spring, you mentioned kind of feeling some of the weight of that. So how do you, from a tangible standpoint, how do you go about those pressures?
Yeah, well, it's definitely been tough. It's not a battle that, 1, you can face alone, but 2, you can just say, okay, God is able. I'm going to surrender to Christ, and then I'm going to live out my day. It's something that you have to be in works with, just like the football field. If you want to be really good, you have to work really hard. If you want your mindset to be really good, knowing that you surrender to Christ, you have to be in the Word a lot, and you have to pray a lot to God, to surrender to Him, to give up your plan for His plan. And I think the best way to put it is football and my faith are two opposite things. There's no mesh between them two, because football is all production based. You get paid based on how well you do on the field, how well you perform. You play based on how well you perform on the field. It's all about, your resume is all about the film that you put out there. And Christ, as you know as well as I do, it's all about what He did. It's all about how He performed, and it has nothing to do with what we did. And so for them to mesh, it can't be, because in Christ we're weak. In football, we try to be really strong and try to portray something that, will never be satisfying. And so just to understand that I'm going to work really hard for Christ, like He says in Galatians 3:23, work hard for God and not for man. I'm going to work really hard because I love to do it, and Christ has called me to glorify Him, and so I'm going to work really hard in glorifying Him, but knowing that this will never bring me fulfillment. I will always want more. It'll never bring me satisfaction, and that's okay. And whatever happens, God has a plan for it, and His plan is way better than mine. So I think it's definitely tough, but to understand that we cannot do anything, as good as God's grace really has set me free.
So you find yourself as a, hard-hitting safety, one of the toughest players in the country, right in the middle. So there's faith, there's football. You're very serious about both, and you're a big part of both. So how do you handle your competitive nature, and you play defense? So, you've got to be, tough and physical, with being a follower of Christ and being called to walk in humility.
Yeah. I think I always like to say that, if Christ was down here right now and He was playing football, He would play the game as it's supposed to be played. Hit really hard, encourage your teammates, be really competitive, give it everything you got. So, at the end of the day, this game is a physical sport, and that's what we sign up for. And when I cross the green lines, it's go mode. But every time that I make a play, I try to glorify God and know that I can make that play without Him, and mentally, physically, and spiritually, He's got me right where He wants me to be. And it's definitely a different spot, right? Like, you are a child of Christ, but you're this hard-hitting safety who loves contact, and so those look different, but definitely you can put two and two together, and just know that as long as you're playing for Christ, He will provide.
So you're near the end here of your 5th year at Texas. You've had an amazing career. How do you hope that Texas Longhorn fans remember you?
Yeah, I hope they remember me as significant. I think success would be awesome, right? I think, whether it's a record-breaking stat, or it's an award winner, or it's a national championship, that would be amazing. But more than that, I hope they remember me as somebody that was significant, somebody that changed the locker room, somebody that impacted the community, somebody that when you look back, you always remember him for who he was and not what he did. And so I really just try to be a disciple in the locker room, and just try to bring joy to every single day, and try to touch everybody that I can with positivity and with light.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, and some of you may have seen it, we had Brandon Baker in here a couple of weeks ago, offensive lineman, and he really spoke to the impact that you've had on him and in the locker room. So I know all those things, to be true.
I appreciate it.
I know you've got a lot going on right now, but looking ahead, and it doesn't have to be football. Like, what are some things that you have in mind as far as goals for your life?
Yeah. I don't know what I want to do after football, but I know I want to be a leader in some way or fashion. Um, I truly just want to inspire others because, I think my story is a great story to tell people that if you don't feel worthy enough, just keep working because there's always, light at the end of the tunnel if you just keep working and you keep trusting God. And so, um, I really just want to be a leader in life. As for football, one of my goals is to get drafted, and obviously one of my goals is to win a national championship this year um, and play a long career. But more than that, just be a disciple in the locker room, um, and you know, a goal of mine is to have a great family, and for my kids to know how much, and my wife to know how much. You know, their dad or their husband loves them, and just a God fearing man.
Hmm. Oh, that's great. And of course, you have a lot of gifts, like athletically, physically. Have you ever thought about what your spiritual gifts might be?
I think, yeah, that's a good question. I think spiritual gift, um, I've been placed on um, in a light where Texas football, you know, it's portrayed that you're way cooler than you actually are. And so um, I think I try to use my platform to help others. And so I think my spiritual gift would just be, um, motivating others and encouraging others when they don't feel as encouraged as they should feel because of my story, because of my adversity, because of what I've went through, but all of that because God has forced me to lean on Him through adversity, through a struggle, but also through success, knowing that the lows of the lows aren't always that low, and the highs of the highs aren't always that high, but Christ just keeps you right here,
Hmm.
and His ultimate plan is way better than anything that you have planned for. So I think one of my spiritual gifts is to be an encourager and a motivator.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And for you mentioned adversity again, and I do want to circle back to for the kid that's out there that might be a freshman in high school and he just got placed on the B team and he's feeling discouraged and might feel like quitting football. How would you encourage him?
Yeah, I would encourage him exactly how my youth group leader encouraged me. Um, don't play for the results. Don't play for the opinion of others. Don't play for the approval of man, but play because that's what you love to do. Play because, you know, you love your locker room and you love your teammates and you have fun doing it. Uh, it wouldn't change if you were on freshman A or freshman B based off the love of the game. The love of the game is all the same no matter where you're at,
Mhm.
right? And so um, I think don't be result oriented, but just fall in love with the process and anything that you want to do in life. I believe that you're capable of doing it. It's just whether or not you trust God and you just work really hard and understand that you give it up to the Lord, whatever plan He has, you trust it, and all you can do is control what you can control and work really hard and believe with a positive mindset that you'll accomplish what you set your mind to.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. And, our culture pushes, everything's about results and
Yeah,
quick achievements and quick wins. And not many people speak to the process or take that part serious enough. And so it's great to have, wise leaders like you speaking to that. Um, when you think back on your time at Texas, what has been your favorite memory?
favorite memory as a time in Texas. That's a great question, especially since this is my last game in DKR in our home stadium. Um, I think the best times I've had at Texas were always the smiles in the locker room after a win. Um, you know, everybody's dancing with each other because they're so proud of the hard work that we just put in, you know, came to fruition, and everything that we had to go through. Now we're seeing the results of it. And I think that's so cool when everybody's just so proud of one another. I think another moment, one of my favorite moments, is when I got put on scholarship and just rewatching that video and seeing how many of my teammates were so happy for me. And to know that, you know, that my teammates really respected me. And that was so cool to just see the smiles on my teammates' face and how proud they were of me. And it's just so cool to know that you're not going to remember, you know, this play or that play, but you're going to remember what y'all said in the locker room, in the good times and in the bad times.
Mm-hmm. And that's such a special moment when you were awarded that scholarship. Can you take us through that day? And like, is that something that you thought was a possibility? And like, how did all that play out?
Yeah, every time the our videographer would come into the team meeting room and he would have his video set up, I always thought that Coach Sark was going to tell me I was on scholarship. And there was a bunch of times that didn't happen. And so that time I was like, oh man, maybe it didn't happen. And Coach Sarks ends the meeting. I'm like, well, darn it. And he said, oh, last thing, Michael Taaffe, you're on scholarship. And, you know, I ultimately just put my head down and was just like, wow, you know, it feels good to know that, you know, a lot of that hard work came to fruition. And just to see my teammates, you know, jumping up and down for me and so proud of me, that's the coolest moment. It wasn't about the scholarship because, like we talked about, you're always going to want more. Once you get the scholarship, now you want to start. Once you start, now you want to become an All-American. Once you become that, now you want to be a first rounder and win the DB of the Year award and win the Walk-On of the Year award. You always want more. But to sit back and see how proud your teammates were of you, that was really cool.
Do you feel like you always want more?
I do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I know that, you know, as much as I try to say that, you know, there's, you know, I think that's a really good question because as human beings, I don't think we'll ever be fulfilled in this earth because this isn't meant for our home. We're meant to be in heaven with Christ. And, you know, everything that we do, you know, it's never going to be good enough because it's not the fruit of Christ. And everything that we do, you know, it's all about perspective, right? Like I always say this example in golf. If you're a 10 handicap and you shoot, you know, 90s on average or low or high 80s, you know, you're always going to want, oh man, if I just shot an 85, that would be a great day. But the 5 handicap, he's like, man, if I just shot a 75, that would be a great day. So it's all about perspective, and the more you achieve, the more you want. And so that's why I love my faith so much, because it has nothing to do about our achievements, but everything that Christ has done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate the honest answer too, because that's our nature, is that we crave more. That's just how we're wired, and so it's okay to accept that that's what our flesh might crave, but that's not how we're necessarily called to live.
For sure.
So I know with the game on Friday, you got limited time on Thanksgiving Day, but if you weren't playing football, what does a typical Thanksgiving look like for Michael Taaffe?
Yeah, I love that. I love that question. Usually we go to my family ranch, and it's a bunch of our family, cousins, uncles, aunts, second cousins, grandparents, and we all just go around driving four-wheelers, watching the sunset, grilling burgers, talking, watching football, and it was great. It was a great family tradition when we grew up, and we watched Texas versus Texas A&M growing up at our family ranch. And you know, it's crazy because now all my family's coming into Austin to watch me in that game, so I'm so grateful. But yeah, the ranch was really awesome, and you know, I would say my favorite Thanksgiving meal is when you put the Hawaiian roll and you put some honey ham inside the Hawaiian roll and make a little sandwich. I love that. That's my favorite for sure.
That's my favorite as well,
Oh, I love that.
actually.
That's awesome.
So you've got the honey ham sandwich. What else is on your plate?
Ham sandwich. We got mac and cheese. Obviously, we got bacon wrapped green beans, and see what else. I'm not a big stuffing guy, so we'll do that, and then we'll do like some refried beans also. So not as traditional as everybody else, but I think the bacon wrapped green beans are the most slept on. My aunt does a great job cooking those.
And then for dessert,
Oh, dessert, definitely apple pie with ice cream. Yeah, it's
mm,
great. I guess it's like apple cobbler, like a little warm apple pie with ice cream on top. It's amazing. I love it.
yeah, that does sound amazing.
Yeah.
So last question for today. Um, Maybe there's a Texas Longhorn fan out there that's watching this podcast and moved by what you've shared, but they might not know where to start as far as pursuing a relationship with God. What would your advice be to them?
Yeah. Well, one, any sort of encouragement. I mean, any sort of, movement towards Christ, He loves. I truly believe. And so, how would you start? Because the Bible seems so scary, and so don't know where to start. And if you start at page one, you might get lost, as I've done before. Try to start on page one and just have no idea what's going on. Um, but I would just one go to community, go to somebody that you trust, go to a family member or friend that maybe has, a faith relationship, and just tell them, because I think community is the best way to get closer to Christ. But then also just sit in your room in a quiet space and just pray, and just call out to God that, whether you know what you're doing or not, as I once did in my life, just God, I don't know what I'm doing, but I long for your love, and your freedom and your grace. And so show me who you are, however that may be. And I truly believe God will answer your prayer.
For sure. Well, Michael, thanks so much for taking the time to come and share your story today. It was certainly inspiring, and I know it'll inspire many.
I appreciate you. This is awesome.